It's no secret that NASCAR has made many controversial changes over the years, but very few were as controversial as the introduction of stages in 2017. Now, stages were likely introduced for a myriad of different reasons on NASCAR's end, and were by no means an arbitrary rule change. But now, going into our 8th year of stage racing in 2024, they still remain a topic of hot debate. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over all the points for and against stage racing to answer the question, does NASCAR need to ditch the stages? But before we can discuss why stages need to go, first we need to understand the many reasons why they were implemented. First and foremost, duh, the television partners wanted to run some more ads. And maybe without the fans complaining that it's during green flag racing. I don't think they actually care either way, but let's just pretend they do. There's not much else to say at this point. Racing is a business. Sports as a whole are a business. Obviously, they're gonna run ads whenever they can. Not much we can really do about it. The second point is that stages were introduced arguably at the height of the Gen 6 car's intermediate racing woes. As we've discussed before, the post-2014 Gen 6 car was never the same on intermediate tracks. And in 2015 and 2016, we saw a lot of drawn-out, boring mile-and-a-half races with like 10 guys finishing on the lead lap. When you add in 2 extra restarts placed midway through the race, you can certainly prevent that from happening. And while the 550 package didn't debut until 2019, we can reasonably assume that it may have been in the works as early as 2017. And they probably knew that restarts were going to be their bread and butter for a few good years. Well, maybe I shouldn't say good years, they were actually pretty bad years. And last but not least, 2017 was also the year that NASCAR went full send on committing to the new playoff format. And creating the idea of a stage winner and awarding them playoff points in the middle of the race certainly helped to tame a very broken points format. I mean, it's still broken in some regards, but that's besides the point. This video is about stages. Aside from just playoff points, I'd argue that the entire concept of stage points is good, actually. Racing is so inherently chaotic. You can lead an entire race, get wiped out on a green-white checkered finish, and walk away with nothing. Now it's like, okay, you wrecked and you goofed up your strategy at the end, but at least you get to walk away with 20 points and 2 playoff points, which is not bad for a day's effort. It also helps make point battles way more interesting during the course of a race, because a much larger difference of points between 2 drivers can be made up with the advent of stages. But stages certainly have a lot of detracting factors as well. Pit strategy is all but non-existent for the first halves of many races. Sure, someone may save a set of sticker tires here and there by opting not to pit when a caution comes out just before a stage ends, but in like 95% of races, that hardly ever makes a difference by the time they reach the end. Road courses were certainly the tracks affected by this the most, as everyone figured out very quickly that you could just pit before pit road closes at the end of each stage, and restart back at the front with better track position. This was already an issue with the Gen 6 car, but with how much harder it is to pass on road courses in the next gen car, this strategy is now unquestionably the route to go. Unless you have a guy like Austin Dillon or Ty Gibbs sitting on the cut line who needs a few extra points late in the summer. But this also means, more often than not, the guys who score stage wins and stage points on road courses aren't the guys who are actually running well, which kinda defeats the whole purpose of stage racing. And so far, on road courses at least, there hasn't been a perfect solution yet. The strategy got so boring in 2022 that NASCAR ended up eliminating stage cautions for road courses in 2023, which did result in some interesting strategies at times, like at COTA, which was shaping up to be an amazing 3-way battle for the win between guys who were all close on fuel. At least until the finish devolved into like 10 green-white checkered finishes, which just sometimes happens in NASCAR. But on the other end of the spectrum, many of the road courses this season were ungodly boring. Even Sonoma, which is... Actually, wait, Sonoma is usually boring. Even Watkins Glen, which is usually considered one of the best races of the year, was a near caution-free snooze fest. I'm not saying you need cautions to make races interesting, but when there's one guy who is clearly the fastest, there's no opportunity to get off cycle because the tires don't wear, and the new car is much harder to pass in, then yeah, it's a recipe for a Sunday afternoon nap. Because of this, NASCAR ended up reversing their decision before the season even ended, with stage cautions returning at the Roval. They say this was because they wanted the playoff races to all be officiated the same way, but I feel like that's just a cover-up for the real reason, which is, man, we really don't want to have a horribly boring playoff race in our big Netflix documentary next year. Because, hey, to the casual race fan, closer racing is better racing, even if that's not always the truth. Okay, so pardon the whole road course tangent there, but what about every other type of racetrack that NASCAR goes to? Isn't NASCAR primarily an oval-focused sport? Look at the intermediates. The racing is better than it's been in decades now. Do we really need to be throwing artificial cautions to bunch the pack up when the product that we've got is already really good? At super speedways, I'd argue that all stages do is make guys more likely to crash in the middle of the race. which seems counterproductive for NASCAR's quote-unquote cost-cutting measures. But then again, so is the whole idea of turning Atlanta into a superspeedway, but I digress. I won't say stages are all bad for superspeedway racing though, as it definitely seems to have helped eliminate the dreaded train around the top for 2 hours procedure that we used to witness. So I'll give it a W there. Even on short tracks, whose racing product is a huge point of contention right now, I would argue that stages don't really help. I was at both the Bristol and Martinsville playoff races this season, and it was so frustrating to see the stage caution fly and let everyone pit for fresh rubber, just as it seemed like the tires were finally wearing out enough to create passing opportunities. Now more than ever, short tracks need those long green flag runs just so we're able to see some form of passing. Because even on restarts, these guys can't pass each other. And it's not like guys generally get super separated during a long green flag run on short tracks either. Usually lap traffic helps keep the leaders together more so than most tracks. Usually. This is why the popular fan opinion now seems to be that stages themselves don't need to go, as they actually do serve to create entertainment during the race, but rather stage cautions need to go. Again, aside from the aforementioned road course races which had mixed results this season, stage cautions aren't much of a benefit at any racetrack now. They seem to purely serve to halt the action, give networks a few extra minutes to run ads, and provide an excuse to bunch the field up. We've already addressed why that last point isn't as big of a deal as it used to be, but even when it comes to television, will stage cautions really be needed in the near future? It's beginning to sound more and more likely that NASCAR is pivoting to streaming soon. If we ever get to the point where every race is available on streaming services to watch ad-free, then stage cautions will have lost even more of their meaning. Now, that likely isn't going to happen for quite a few more years, but it's still something to consider going forward. Really, from a pure competition standpoint, there's no reason to stop the action with a yellow flag. Even when the stage cautions came back at the Roval this year, it wasn't because they needed to. It was just a band-aid for the next-gen car's poor racing product of that type of track. But who knows, if NASCAR throws a few switches, maybe develops a new tire with Goodyear, works on shifting, adds some horsepower. Okay, maybe I'm giving them a little too much credit here, but I'm saying if the road course product is improved in the coming years, then they won't even need stage cautions there either. In conclusion, do stages need to go? I would say no. I like the feeling of there being something on the line throughout the race. A chance to gain points or increase your playoff point cushion. Something to incentivize good, hard racing. But the stage cautions? Yeah, I think we're at the point where we could live without those. But I want to hear your take. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think stages need to stay or go? But don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and check out dailydownforce.com for more awesome NASCAR content.